Welcome back to Scratching the Surface, a horror movie podcast. My name is Justin, aka Money,
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
and thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. We just want to, again say thank you to everyone participating and listening to these podcasts. We are up on YouTube now, so go check out our channel. I believe we just posted our most recent podcast there, Halloween 2018, Michael Myers. If you haven't checked that out, go check it out. That was a really, really fun episode, the Halloween special. Me and Junes definitely dove into that pretty hard. So we were excited to do that, and we're excited to do this week's, and it's going to be over The Conjuring. Initial thoughts just on hearing that title, Cody, because it definitely gets me excited.
Hearing the word The Conjuring is unsettling. And I remember when it came out, Money, it was a phenomenon at the time. It was so widely successful and I think so genuinely scary and almost kind of modernized in a way for horror that looking back on it now, I think, wow, what a great horror film. They did such a good job with it. And I hear the word Conjuring as a movie. I know you're getting quality here. And James Wan, the director, does a really good job with each scene throughout the movie. There's not a lot of downside throughout. So, yes, I would say unsettling and truly scary from both a possession standpoint and a jump scare standpoint. So that's my initial thought when you tell me what I think of The Conjuring.
Yeah, hearing The Conjuring, just instant flashbacks to this movie of just being terrifying, on edge, and being really scared, like actually feeling scared. I feel like with a lot of horror movies, it's slow burners or it's go, 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 it's full throttle. And, to feel on edge and truly, truly scared is really hard to accomplish. But this movie is up there. So, yeah,
And
we're going to, yeah, go
when
ahead.
you say The Conjuring, and we'll touch on this, they were going to call it the Warren Files. Talk about the Warrens in a bit, but
Ooh.
I'm very, very glad they went with the title The Conjuring because it's way more effective from both a marketing standpoint and just going in knowing what you're going to get from the movie. So I just wanted to mention that too.
No, yeah, of course. So let's see. Let's just dive. Um, we're gonna keep this 5 minutes here, 10 minutes maybe, spoiler free. Just initial thoughts on the movie, and I'm gonna start us off actually with the movie info or the synopsis, just to give anyone listening a visual, mental representation of this movie. Um, so in 1970, paranormal investigators and demonologists Lorraine and Ed Warren are summoned to the home of Carolyn and Roger Perrin. The Perrins and their 5 daughters have recently moved into a secluded farmhouse where supernatural presence has made itself known. Through the manifestations are relatively beginning at first, events soon escalate in horrifying fashion, especially after the Warrens discover the house's macabre history. Otherwise, just insane history of the recent generations of families and people that have lived there and what has happened. And we learn about that throughout the movie, and we'll obviously touch up on that and who has all been there previously. But rated R, like Cody said, directed by James Wan, director from Saw and like Insidious as well. Guy
Other
runs deep
movies,
with it.
Dead Silence was a horror film from back in the early 2000s. He did Furious 7, which I didn't realize. I knew he did Aquaman, which is kind of a fun one. And then Malignant, which have you seen that one? It's on HBO. That's a really good one too. Not my
I haven't.
favorite, but it's solid. It is solid. So he did that one as well. But yes, like you say, Insidious 1 and 2 was James Wan. And I'm really surprised just how much similarities I kind of noticed after rewatching The Conjuring and then thinking back to the Insidious movies. There's a lot of similar direction style and the type of film lens that's used as well. Definitely a lot of things that you notice are pretty close between the two. So I like that you bring that up.
Yeah, yeah. So my, keeping it spoiler free, my initial thoughts, this really honestly, I'd probably say like 75% of the time, I'd say a good three-fourths of this movie, you're on edge. There's probably about a quarter of it where there's scenes and things going on where you can kind of just drop your shoulders and relax. And the other three-fourths is holy shit, like, wow. But depicting, this family and what they go through and the things that they have to admit to and just be open to, to get help from Ed and Lorraine, which we'll talk about soon, is very hard for them at first, but they eventually, succumb to it and, realize they need help. Like there's a lot of things going on in this house. The history is insane with it. We kind of figure that out in the second half. Um, and with it's got a runtime of an hour and 50 minutes, but damn, like every single part of this movie just it makes sense. It flows nicely.
Mhm.
Like I said, you're on edge. I'd say three-fourths of the time, and it's just incredible because again, it's based on real life events. If anyone listening didn't know that, which we'll cover soon, um, which just makes it a hell of a lot more scary. So my initial thoughts, but yeah,
It's
what do you think, Cody?
so for a horror movie based on a true story like this, they really paid homage to the original paranormal investigators beautifully. And they hyped up this duo of these paranormal investigators in The Conjuring. And it gets you in this awesome, exciting mood of seeing these people go in and try to help this family out and sort of be their last salvation when it comes to beating this demon. We've got a really cohesive story for a horror movie from start to end. Like you say, there really isn't a whole lot of downtime, and it feels like the movie flies by because it's so enjoyable. We see a lot of genuinely good jump scares. They're not your typical horror trope jump scares. They're actually well thought out and perfectly timed, which in horror, we see a lot of just not well timed jump scares. In The Conjuring, you don't have that. Everything is well thought out. We have decent characters that we can care about. We've got this full family. We've got the Warrens, which we also care about. They are genuine. They are trying to help these people out. And then we also have, like you said, a very, very deep history of hauntings on this land and in this house that run extremely deep and helps to just heighten the overall sense of dread that's just drowning the family and drowning the Warrens throughout this film. You are going to enjoy it. If you haven't seen it, I don't know how you haven't. It's possible that you have not. If not, go see it. It's such a good one. And I can only imagine just how good the movie theater experience was for this one. I'm very sad that I didn't have that experience, but that's okay. I'll
Yeah.
move on.
With being like a paranormal franchise, I get the hate kind of behind how these paranormal movies have become today. They're very, I'd say, predictable, just outright bad sometimes. You and I recently did an episode over The Exorcist Believer, which
Mhm.
didn't live up to the hype. And you take that compared to this, like you know the difference. So it's on its this franchise is on its own level. This movie alone to me is on its own level. We're gonna dive into uh our reviews, our scores, our summaries, and we'll also go off of Rotten Tomato scores, audience and critic score, things like that. And let's just dive into, just some of the real life events that took there, the history of it, the land, the generations, the people in the 70s that moved in, which is, the family based on this movie. So do you just, we'll kind of go back and forth and just nitpick some stuff, but Junes, you want to just kind of give a little basis of, the family in the house?
Yeah, I'll start with the family in the house. We have
Yeah.
got a family here. We've got the parents. I can't believe I think there was 5 kids, 4 or 5.
Five
They're all,
daughters.
yep, 5 daughters. They're moving into this new house on a farm in Harrisville, Rhode Island. And they move into this house. It's a fresh start. The dad's got a tight run schedule in terms of his job, so he's kind of on the go. And there's a lot of parts in the movie that the mom is left at home alone with the children. So all of these family members are moving into the house. They're getting settled in. They've all got a bunch of different rooms. There's a lot of kids here, so you got to keep in mind we've got Christine, we've got Cindy, we've got Andrea, we've got April, we've also got Nancy. So it's easy to lose track of which one's which throughout the movie. The scenes
Yeah,
are kind of dark as well, so they're not always well lit, and the scares are so good that you kind of forget about which character was in
you
the scene.
do. You really do.
So those are all the daughters. The mom, Carolyn, played very well by Lily Taylor, and then we've got Roger as well, the father, who was played by Ron Livingston. He did a fine job too. He was going through a lot of inner turmoil, seeing what was happening around the house and to his family. I think he played that fear really genuinely, and for me, I was bought into his character very much so. And the all around cast, you really can't have a whole lot of complaints. I was I was so impressed by a few of the scenes we got from the children as well, when they are trying to express moments of terror, and their facial expressions are so spot on and so believable that it just helps you be in the moment even more so when you have some of those really scary jump scares and creepy moments. So
Yeah.
all in all, the whole cast, the whole family is easy to buy into and invest in, and to enjoy watching their story play out throughout The Conjuring.
Yeah. The characters were insane. Not a huge cast, but the parent family alone, like each and every person had a role executed perfectly, in my opinion. A lot of horror movies, kids, they don't they don't portray stuff good as
Yeah.
far as emotions, the way like what they're supposed to do, how to make things look natural. These kids, if this happened in real life, like to me, or if I had a family, like and like that happened, oh my gosh, like these kids portrayed it perfectly. And Lily Taylor as Carolyn, holy cow, just her whole character alone, incredible. Um, so but going back to kind of the real life events, it was originally known as the Arnold estate, I believe, and many generations came through, going all the way back to the 1680s. And in 1971, the parent family bought the house from the previous owner, I believe, just from the bank at auction. And we learned that in the movie because they didn't, as they said that because they didn't know the previous owner. They had no idea of what was going on, who lived there. Again, just the history of it.
They were completely
Um,
oblivious to all of that in the beginning, which is crazy to
seriously,
think of because there's so much of that history that if you knew about it, there's no way in hell you're moving in there.
right, right. And I read, reading and doing research, by the time the parent family moved out, they basically described it as a legit portal disguised as a farmhouse.
Wow.
And for anyone that didn't know, and I just told Junes this before we started, like King Philip's War was fought on that property back in 1674 to 1676. It was the bloodiest and most gruesome war fought in American history, like per capita in America at the time. So it's still true to this date. So going all the way back then, just you can imagine how it stigmatizes that property, that land, the spirits that
Hmm.
still roam there, the core ones that have always been there from the beginning, and just every all those soldiers and everything that fought there. Um, and if you want to just dive into Bathsheba, because that is like the main villain of this movie, Bathsheba. Um, for anyone listening, it's the main villain, and then there's some other ones that we learn about. But Junes, if you just kind of want to touch up just on her and kind of keep it general, that'd be good.
Yeah. So you mentioned that war that took place on that land. This actual house, our main setting in The Conjuring, was built in 1863 by Judson Sherman, who married Bathsheba, who turns out was related to Marytown Easty, one of the women accused of witchcraft and hanged in 1692. So there's already a little bit of a demonic spirit that is in the presence of Bathsheba. And after marrying Jedson, they have a baby. This baby was 7 days old. Jedson caught Bathsheba sacrificing the baby in front of the fireplace. After that, Bathsheba ran out to the tree out front, climbed it, and proclaimed love to Satan and cursed anyone who took her land. So Bathsheba is a huge entity in this movie. We will talk about her quite a bit. I loved Bathsheba in this. I thought Bathsheba was scary as hell.
Oh, the one of the scariest things to me to this date, as far as a horror movie goes, in any subgenre of horror, like by far, by far. But yeah, Bathsheba killing her like 7 day old son, infant, literally, to use your gift as a woman on this earth to have kids, and then to look at God and be like, you know what, F you, I'm gonna birth
Mhm.
it, but I'm gonna kill it 7 days later. So interesting twist, like, and then to kill it, curse the land, and literally hang yourself for anyone moving in as the generations go on. Like, I'm gonna haunt the shit out of you. Like, I'm gonna terrorize you, basically. So
You hear that story and you move into
it's
that
crazy.
house. If you know about it, you're gonna be checking your corners every second of the day, every
It's
second of the day.
insane.
And then there
So
was a lot of other deaths on this land. We can get into that more as we go on here, but again, just playing on the fact that there's a very rich history in terms of demonic spirits.
yes, and we have Ed and Lorraine Warren, literally the most famous ghost hunters to this date, um, taking part in thousands of investigations, paranormal activity, cases. They even have their own museum that's standing today where, well, first off, both of them are passed. um, Ed died first, I think 2009, and
Yep.
Lorraine was kind of recent, handful of years ago. So she lived, a bit longer, and still took part in actual investigations still, which is crazy. Just shows the dedication and just what she was meant to do on this earth. Um, and she was actually a medium, and
Think
believe if you believe it or don't, I mean, it's hard to tell, but we don't want to get into that. It's just that's what she proclaimed herself as, and that's what you see in this movie a lot. And it gets pretty dark, the things she's able to walk in a house and just see almost what's there immediately, making its presence known. um but I mean, what do you think of Ed and Lorraine? Because being that famous and just having gifts, and to just wanting to help people is pretty incredible in my opinion.
yes, I absolutely agree. Horror movies have been around for a while. The idea of the horror genre has existed for easily a century. And I think more so in the actual real life right here in our world, I think this couple was one of the most monumental when it comes to paranormal investigations. They, like you said, thousands of cases they claim to have done. I think even 10,000 was a few of the sites that I read up on, which
It's
is
insane.
absolutely insane to think of them going to 10,000 different people and helping them through these situations. And I think that just goes to show during that time period, whether you think it's real or not, there was something going on in the country. And there was this almost paranoia of spirits and demons possessing your house, possessing items, and possessing humans. And I think this was a huge phenomenon at that time. And whether the Warrens played on that and kind of cashed out or not, that's
Hmm.
for you to say, the viewers. But believe what you want to believe. They definitely were a legitimate duo and they did all these investigations and they claimed to their deaths that every single thing they wrote down in their books, their memoirs, it was all true.
Yes,
So that take that with a grain of salt, but believe what you want to believe.
they literally took it to the grave, like
Yep.
everything they believed in. Like, you can't, why, I don't know why anyone would make that up, but it's not for me to judge, it's not for me to speak on them. But yeah,
And they
Um,
were evidently pretty genuine people. They were kind, they were easygoing, they were likable. So I think that gives a little more, I would say, believability to their story. If these are actually decent people, you wouldn't think that they're trying to take advantage of these folks. You would hope that
no,
their
and
intentions are good, and they
in the
were. I believe
in
they
the
were.
movie, in the well, not in the movie, but in real life, like the dad actually, um, Roger actually kicked Ed and Lorraine out after they were kind of taking part in the seance because it was like hurting the family so bad and stuff was getting so like things were turning so bad. He's like, just get out, leave. You're like, you're making it worse. So he actually like kicked him out at one point in real life, wasn't depicted in the movie. Um, and that's one thing, like, I'll just say I won't get into because it's a lot, but like the real life events are or like the movie depicts things in a certain way and real life events that occurred. There's a lot more that happened in real life that wasn't portrayed or wasn't portrayed correctly in the Conjuring movie. Um, and if I recommend doing your own research because this movie is, I think, an investment. Like it's that good to where if I watched it for the first time, I would want to research it on my own. I'd want to like look stuff up just because of the real life events and just you get to see like what the hell is all this like the movie and then you just research and it's like holy cow
Dude,
and then the things you can dive into in the past you can take just insane.
their stories made waves. They inspired the Amityville Horror. They were on that case, the haunting in Connecticut. They
Mm-hmm.
had that England haunting as well. Some of these stories are almost too good to be true. But God, if there were any bits and pieces that were, you're thinking, wow, I can't believe that could actually happen. And we played on the idea that it heightens the level of fright that you have in this film.
Right. um but do you just kind of want to dive right to the movie now? I think it's about that time where you know
Unless you've got something else you want to say about the Warrens, I think I'm good. I don't want to, like you said, read it up, research as much as you want. You'll see both sides. There was quite a few articles I was reading that were very anti-Warrens, and then some of them that were a little bit more on the Warren side. So it's something that you can research on your own for sure.
right. So to open up, the movie actually starts with Annabelle, the like most famous haunted doll in the world, and there's a couple of girls and a guy explaining kind of the history of it a bit, which I believe back in like 1968 is when it started. And these girls actually got in touch with a medium, Annabelle Higgins, who is actually a real person, died, and the girls had a medium basically giving permission for Annabelle to go into the doll, hence the Annabelle doll. Um, and Ed and Lorraine actually do a really good job of like explaining that in the terms and like things we kind of just learned throughout watching this. Because they are, educators. So they even, they host a lot of things. They teach people things. And this doll just starts playing tricks on them. Annabelle's just like moving around, leaving notes like "miss me yet," like messing up a room, like almost looks like blood on the walls and stuff. But basically just terrorizing these girls, and they end up throwing it in a dumpster, and it eventually comes back again, leaves "miss me" notes. And basically, from what I learned and what they said in the movie, like the doll was used as a conduit to get inside of the girls, and it's an inhuman entity or demon, and they use the word demon a lot. But man, that opening scene was just, man, this movie, just everything about it, and I'm gonna keep saying it, but that opening scene, it looked like that hard knocks on the door and stuff too. Whew, it gets you.
It does. And so we have Ed and Lorraine. They are interviewing, I believe it was Debbie and Camilla, and then I think one of the boyfriends was sitting there too in
Yeah.
that apartment in those opening scenes. And Ed and Lorraine were saying demons never walked the earth, and they don't mean to possess items or a doll. What they're trying to do is get closer to the humans so that they can possess the humans because they never walked the earth as a human. So I loved that scene with Ed and Lorraine explaining that to them. You're not dealing with some regular spirit of a person that passed away, because that was the assumption, is that Annabelle Higgins was the real spirit that was taking over the doll. It wasn't even Annabelle Higgins. The demon was lying to get to the doll and then to get to the humans, which I was very surprised by, because after rewatching it, I would not have caught that.
No, no. And to my knowledge too, even like demons are just like portrayed as like trickster spirits. They get you to believe one thing when it's a lie, and they will do anything to get into you and basically lie right to your face and try to make you feel as vulnerable as possible. But yes, I love that opening scene because it kickstarts kind of the franchise later with Annabelle, and just this whole franchise. And things like that happen later on with like the nun and the other, we get introduced to other things which are in later movies. So very, very cool by them.
So yeah, it ties in directly with Annabelle. Debbie received the doll from one of her, I think it was her aunt, as a gift for her time as a nursing student. So that doll obviously is connected to the Annabelle movies. So that's where that main connection lies there. We don't get to hear about it much in those opening scenes. You kind of have to read up on it. You obviously have to watch Annabelle 2 to understand the connection, but that's how they got the doll in the first place. And then you explained well all of the weird things that were happening in that apartment that kind of got them to contact the Warrens for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And the next scene we get is actually Ed and Lorraine, in a public session. I don't know where this one was held. They do a couple of these throughout the movie, and the second or third one, I think it's just the second. I think they only do two. Is actually they give the location of the second one, but this first one, um, don't know where it's at, but they're basically just educating like the public. I think it's just people that can like sign up for these basically sessions, and they are actually just teaching like demonology and basically answering people's questions. They actually show exorcisms they've done, cases and investigations they've worked on, where they're open about it, and people. And this first one that they're doing it about is actually about Annabelle. And you have these young people. The age range is endless, but like mainly it's a younger crowd, it looks like. And everyone's like, they're like questions, and like everyone just raises their hands because it's just crazy. Like,
That must have
so
been something that they did a lot in the 70s and 80s, was give these lectures at lecture halls to try to explain what they do and try to make people aware of these types of entities that are out there. So yes, they must have done that quite a bit in the 70s and 80s.
I'd have to imagine, yeah, like the things they learned and the experiences they like, dude, it would be crazy.
Yeah, I thought it built up the hype for this paranormal duo so well, and it gets you excited for the rest of the movie. It helps you invest in these two characters, and it just gets you excited overall. Yeah, Lorraine is a clairvoyant. She sees things. She can experience things that others can't. She has this almost sense of these ghosts and spirits that other people just simply cannot see. And then you have Ed, who is a self-certified, I should say, demonologist. So he knows all the lingo, the terminology, and the history of different demons. And I would say he's probably the main speaker of this duo that kind of takes over at these lecture halls and is really the talker of the two.
Yeah, he's like the talker, and but we hear it from him. He gives like all the credit to Lorraine,
Yes,
um,
100%.
just what she can do.
And he knows
So
the toll it takes on her too. So he's very aware of what she's going through whenever they have these cases.
right. So talking about the family, now we're actually able to meet the parents, and we get a really nice scene of them moving in to the Conjuring house, their new house they just bought. And you get to meet the five kids, the mom and dad, and it's a pretty good scene. And just they kind of make it friendly, but like watching this, I'm like, dude, that is a terrifying house. Like the scenes and like cuts they have, like old house. Do not like it. I'm not a fan.
Yes, and I just want to say before that, the opening title for The Conjuring was freaking Chef's Kiss. It was so good. And the transition from the title is perfect because we've got this scroll up screen explaining Ed and Lorraine Warren. And then we've got the big, bold yellow text of The Conjuring. We've got the very demented music in the background. The screen keeps sliding up. We have a beautiful transition to the inside of the house, looking out the window and seeing the family pulling up in their car. That was so well done. I thought that was freaking awesome. And I just wanted to touch on that. And I
Yes.
also love the scenes of them moving in. They had a really good soundtrack from 1968 by the Zombies, Tell It to Me Slowly. That was a fantastic song to have there because it gives you a little bit of a vibrant 70s vibe, and it kind of puts you in a good mood, kind of lets your guard down a little bit after that freaky ass title screen. So I really love that scene all around. Like you said, you get the whole family kind of moving in, getting their stuff put in the rooms. And the setting is just phenomenal. It's impeccably old, yet just structurally sound enough for a family to live in.
Yeah, it's just, it's like a cozy kind of comfy rural area, and it's
Mhm.
just doesn't seem like it's that far out of the way of anything, but just enough to make it that much more creepier. So we get
It,
introduced to them, like I said, and we actually get to meet Sadie, the family dog, who doesn't live very long. Let's just let's just say that. You see April playing with Sadie a lot, and just that scene where they're moving in and Sadie's just whimpering, not doesn't want to come in the house. Roger even grabs the collar of Sadie and like come on, like let's go, and not even won't budge. So very very cool. Like it's amazing, and like again, like if you want to believe it or not, but like animals like can I feel like sense that. So like putting that in the movie was pretty interesting.
they can sense cancer. Why not sense demonic presences without? Yeah, I,
Right.
I agree, and I love that too. I think having the dog kind of knowing that something's up lets you know as the audience that okay, this house has got something weird within. And I also want to touch on a scene there where we have April out by the tree. She
Yes.
found this circus music box. We don't get a jump scare right away with that, but they use this creepy, and the director used this multiple times. There's this really slow zoom in angle that he has on some of these scenes and then zoom outs that I thought he used really well, and they were very effective. They kind of built up a really good creepy vibe. So you get a
Hmm.
scene with April by the tree. You don't have a jump scare, but it just lets you know that something is coming here soon, and that it gets us ready as the audience.
I like how honestly I like how there's not a jump scare because it does like it foreshadows that so much. It's at the end of the movie they actually put that in their museum. It's used throughout the entirety of the movie, and it's associated with another character that has passed there, who we'll talk about. So love that. I just good slow burner into it, but it gets insane pretty soon. But immediately, like following that too, we get introduced to the clap game, and it's literally a game of hide and seek, and someone's blindfolded. And the way to find people is they get three opportunities to clap. So the seeker, it can say clap, they clap, they could do that two more times for a total of three times. And by the third time, hopefully you're close to someone and can like reach out and touch them and find them. And that's how you'd win the game. And I believe it's Nancy who uh, accidentally breaks what is to the basement entrance, which was boarded up. And even the parents are like, why would they board it up? If you have an actual like cellar in a basement, it's almost like hidden because it's you have to in the movie you can see you have to open a door, and then it's just almost looks like a closet, and I feel like you'd never know there'd be a basement there even if they boarded it up. Like they did a great job hiding it, and when they broke it, everyone kind of like tattletales and like freaks out,
Yeah.
and then Roger, and Carolyn come over and they're like, oh, like didn't know this was here. Why did they board it up? And then he's like, well, I'll just have to check on it in the morning. So they don't really worry about it. It's nothing too eyebrow raising. So, um,
It's
very,
it's
very cool scene to what is later portrayed with this, clap game later in the movie.
Yeah, this hide and seek clap game. We see this throughout the movie, and those
Hmm.
scenes are always really freaking good. They're really good.
Yeah.
And to touch on the setting that we have, this house, like we said, it's perfectly old yet structurally sound enough to live in. And I also love that everything has minimal, very minimal lighting. So you can only see so much no matter whether they're walking through the hall, the kitchen, the upstairs. So you're constantly wondering what is lurking in the corners. I love that they do that and they have the minimal lighting. It just heightens the sense of what's there, being scared. I love that. They did a great job with it. And like I said, we see it throughout the movie. So very effective.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to add too with that scene, the basement, Roger actually goes down to investigate it
Yep.
with matches. And when he leaves those box of matches on the steps, again, foreshadowing another event that's going to come up. So just wanted to add that in there. Very, very cool. Those matches with what's going to come up.
Yes. And then we have a nice at the end of the night, another good zoom out by the old tree at the pond. So we've got the old tree out front. We've got this little pond out front as well. And then you've got the main house. I believe Sadie also, the dog, does die. I think they find her the next morning,
April
dead out.
does. Yep.
Yep, April finds her out on the side of the house, dead. So that's a big scare there too for the family. Like, what in the hell is going on? Why is our dog just dead? The first one of the
Yeah.
first mornings we're here.
Yeah. And, if I were them putting two to two together, like she doesn't want to come in and then she's like dead the next day. It's like, what's going on?
Little odd.
Like it'd be impossible to tell, but it's like, you think it'd be like, it'd put you on edge a little bit.
Hmm.
But, kind of soon after that, we see Carolyn's bruises to begin. And we see a lot of these throughout the movie. They look nasty too. Like these are huge. You know, they're like fist size, if anyone can imagine that. And she
Yeah,
doesn't
very
think
abnormal.
much of it. Yeah. And, they keep saying, throughout this movie how the girls are cold, everyone's cold, and it's just freezing. And there's different parts of the house that actually are colder than the others, hence an entity or something in there with them uh throughout
Yeah,
this
the
movie. And
toilet.
smelling bad odors is another
Yes,
thing
bad
too.
odors. Yep.
So did you know that was a thing, Cody? Like bad odors is can be a sign of an actual presence there.
Yeah, and the Warrens actually, yeah, they mentioned that later on in the movie that that's one of the main indicators of a demonic presence is almost a rotting smell within the
Yeah.
house or wherever you're located at. So that's a very good indicator. Yeah, the toilets don't work. It's really cold. So this house, there's just something up with it that is off, and the family is starting to kind of notice these things more and more as the movie goes on.
And one big problem that they have that they keep bringing up is furnace issues.
Hmm.
This freaking furnace doesn't work. So why? I don't know. That Roger is like I mean, he's a hands-on guy. He fixes cars and things like that. And being out on a farm, you're hands-on in general. So it seems like they're always like fixing it or something. So,
Hmm.
um,
I
we
think
also
they
see
they
we
also
also see
noticed
the
that the clocks stop at 3:07. So keep that in
that's
mind.
exactly what I had too
Yep.
next.
Yep.
307. So why 307? Every clock in that house, they mention it, every single thing that's timed or have it, 307. So, let's see. So I I had noted too in like Monroe, Connecticut. Now we actually see the Warrens base, their museum and haunted items. What did you think of that scene? Just initial thoughts, like holy cow, it's insane.
Yeah, so they have a journalist that stops by and he's asking them some questions about the work that they do. And again, that helps to build up this idea of this paranormal fighting couple of Ed and Lorraine. And we get a look at their almost occult museum of items they've collected throughout the past from the different cases they have worked on. And when we are in that room, you feel the dread within, and you feel that these items do truly contain something demonic, some kind of presence within them. These items act as almost a some kind of item that can contain these spirits, though they are not nullified. These spirits can still get out. and having them in one location is, like Ed says, keeping the genie in the bottle, also like keeping guns off of the street. So I love those lines and I
Yes,
enjoyed those scenes as well.
I did too. It just seeing it, it just gives you an eerie feeling. And he actually educates that. Would you say he was a journalist?
Yep, I think a journalist stopped by to ask him some questions.
Yeah, so he does a pretty good job educating him, and we actually see for the first time too Judy kind of creeping around in there. There's a cool POV shot that they do where like
Yeah.
you're almost like her peeking, and then like you go back. So he's like, wait a minute, like, yeah, and he finds her and he's like, don't ever come in this room again. And again, foreshadowing, she'll be in there later in the movie, and kind of getting messed with something evil. So
Yeah,
um
we get to see the Annabelle case too and there as
yeah, I forgot
well.
to mention that. Good point.
So creepy. I love it. You got the case with the text on the front saying positively do not open. I love that.
And that was actually made, that sign was made by Ed. Act like they keep it in the movie. That's a real life thing that he made. It's there today. And, just to recap this, scene, this museum does stand in real life today. The history, their like offices in there, a lot of recordings and stuff like that, paperwork, and obviously all the haunted items to go with it.
Is it
And
open
obviously
to
the
the
Annabelle
public?
doll.
I can't
You
remember if it's
can,
open to the public or not.
I think you can book a tour,
Oh,
but I don't know who's all allowed in there and what. I'm sure a lot of people just get denied, access to it. I know the Conjuring house itself you can take tours of, and book nights and stuff like that. But as far as that museum, I have no idea. I should look up on that.
I can't imagine being in that room. Oh my god, that just imagine
Well,
sleeping sleeping
Annabelle's in there
overnight.
too.
I know.
Annabelle right there. I think
Oh,
she's like almost centered because of
oh.
how just famous it is. But ugh. We
And
get now
go
one
ahead.
of the yeah we get introduced to a lot of these scenes that kind of reoccur, but kids and their legs getting yanked while sleeping. um I can't remember which kid first experiences it. But basically, she's sleeping and you just see this tug on her leg. And uh Rogers, actually, he was sleeping. I think he was just doing like paperwork, or he stayed up late, and
Yep.
he's kind of got a bottle or a little glass of whiskey next to him, so he was drinking, just passed out, and he wakes up to these noises and creaks and stuff like that. And there's a scene there too, like the door opening on its own, hearing creaks, thumping and thuds, and he's just super on edge here. And he's going up the stairs to just meet Andrea, like standing there. That was kind of like even with no music or anything or sounds, it's like a jump scare because it pans like right to her, which I thought was really cool. And basically, she just tells Roger, her sister's sleepwalking
I
again.
believe it. Yeah, she's sleepwalking and she's bumping her head on an old antique armoire, which I looked up is a freestanding closet essentially in one of the bedrooms. So, and before that, like you said, the tugs, we see that frequently in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe the one that got tugged the first night was Christine, and she was in the same room with Nancy. The first tug is minimal. She hardly notices it. I think she kind of goes back to bed for the most part, but it lets us know that there's definitely something there, and we just don't know
Oh
what
yeah,
it is.
oh yeah. Very, very cool how they kind of introduce these things subtly.
Yes.
Like I said, it's almost like a slow burner, but that's the give and pull with these types of movies, like paranormal. Like, yeah, it's gonna start off slow, you get the bulk of it in the second half or at the end. But this movie, it just, man, everything going on, it's amazing. So that was that, and we actually see more bruises on Carolyn, and a bird actually hits the window just out of nowhere, breaks its neck. There's so many things, going on now, like subtly, but there's a lot going on. And it just seems like no one just seems to confront anything. No one, maybe the sisters talk to each other like, oh, like I felt, was this you? Like, or, maybe the next morning or something like that throughout the day. But we never see, I feel like, enough interactions of that or anything. Um, we only see it when it gets really bad, obviously. but I wish there was a little more give and take with maybe getting out of bed more, checking up on things, or like going exploring a little bit, maybe. But I understand, like, dude, if that happened to me, I would, I'd be, if I was their age, legit hiding under the covers. So can't blame
they
them.
they acknowledged those things happened, but they didn't really, yeah, they didn't take action on it, like you say.
So,
They're aware of it, but they didn't do anything with it. They were just assuming, that's just a coincidence there. Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
right. Now I believe we actually get a scene with April talking to her imaginary friend. And with dude, I will say it and I'll keep saying it. These scenes just roll together so good. That's one thing this movie does well. It's like one thing happens and then we get a scene with like another kid. In this case, it's April, and she's talking with her imaginary friend Rory. And while it may sound imaginary, this was actually a real person. And Carolyn actually is the one that checks up on her, and she tries actually talking with him with that circus music box that you mentioned earlier, Cody.
Yeah, that's a
And
good scene. And I also think that in this scene, I can't remember if she sees anything in the spiral mirror within that circus music box. I don't think she does. I think we end up having April kind of move behind the mirror. That scares Carolyn. It kind of scares us too,
she
but
jump scares her own mom. Like,
yeah.
it's so when I was watching that with my rewatch, it was really, I liked how they did that, because now with Carolyn like walking in on April, like talking, there's no one there. She's like, "Oh, you can talk to him through this." She doesn't see anything, and while April jump scares her, she's like, "Oh, this is all just made up. Like she's just having fun." While
Mhm,
yet it's real. Like it's
mhm.
gonna it's gonna bite her in the butt later. So immediately following that, hide and clap again. This time with April, and this to me, dude, is like up there with one of the creepier scenes of the movie. Do you want to explain it, how
Yeah,
it
so
all
they're doing
unfolds?
hide and clap again. Carolyn's looking for April, and she ends up wandering into one of the rooms that has that standing closet. And she hears the clap from the closet. She goes in, she checks the closet. She knows where that sound came from. It's got to be from inside this closet. So she opens it up, and as she's kind of feeling in, she hears April yell out from the other room and kind of laughing at her mom that she couldn't find her, that she was in the wrong spot. And even before that, Carolyn hears the clap right by the closet. When she's in the closet, she hears it. It's right there. And then the daughter, April, comes into the room, and Carolyn's sitting there like, what in the world? I know I heard something coming from this closet. That was so well done and very creepy. I loved it.
The visual of those hands, like you could tell they're like adult
Yep.
hands. These aren't kid hands or arms. Like you actually get to see the forearm and a part of like the elbows. These are not kids. This is like a adult something. So it's just
I
it's creepy, and it's like, yeah, like you said, to be in the same room, it's right there.
I think she could
She's
even hear breathing. I think she heard
Yeah,
breathing even coming from the closet.
she
So
did
that,
say that.
oh my God, this for her in that moment, you've got to be thinking to yourself, what in the world is going on here? You
Yeah.
can acknowledge that being there, and eventually you got to take action because there's something going on.
Yeah, I would just, oh, like I have my own common sense, but in the movie, like if you don't do something, or like, uh, good luck. Like
Yeah,
I don't know,
exactly.
I don't know. Um, we get introduced more now with Roger, and he actually, I believe I don't know if it's from the company he works for, or if it's his, but there's a semi truck outside, and he kind of gets a gig with this, you know, company or contract or something. Basically, where I think he's got to go down to Florida, I think, and it's like a week turnaround, he says, and he's got to start tomorrow. And something I didn't really mention well earlier, like the character development, at least, like, you get to see them move in. These kids are kind of struggling. Some are liking it, the oldest doesn't, and it takes a toll on certain people, and everyone's just trying to come together. They're trying to make this work, and we learn that they're actually not in the best shape financially wise. And that's actually why in real life they couldn't move out earlier. they had to wait till they were more secure to actually be like, okay, like we can afford a different place. Let's get the hell out of here. Like they couldn't do that right away. And I'm assuming like with Roger in the movie, getting that job was huge, but finding the right thing he wanted to do, not so easy. So just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Yeah, it goes to show that the family is just trying to make ends meet, and it lets us know that we're kind of stuck here. We know something's going on as the audience, but we know that this family is stuck here and they're going to have to go through it. They're going to experience some weird things, and you want them to be able to get out. But like you say, they simply can't. And with
Right.
Roger being gone for a week, I think it was like a week turnaround,
Mm-hmm.
you know that there's going to be a lot of moments here where it's just the mom and the kids. And we've already seen the mom having some weird experiences. So that is definitely worrying for the family. And I love that they give us those little scenes and that little bit of character development because, like you said, they're trying to just get by. They're trying to provide for the kids. They're just kind of stuck here. There's not a whole lot they can do.
Yeah, they're like literally forced into it. Like it was just a decision they had to make. And immediately following after that, again, another insane scene. We actually see an intense scene with like a shadow man figure, if you will, with Christine and Nancy in their room. And Christine gets her leg pulled. She wakes up, she sits up, and you see the door actually move. And it's in the movie, you don't see anyone. It's pitch darkness behind this door, but she sees something. And Nancy wakes up and she's like, "What?" And she's like, "There's someone behind the door." And she's just like freaking out. And Nancy gets up, stands like right where it's at, and she's like, "It's right behind you." And the door, dude, just slams shut, and it's such a loud jump scare. And it's like you kind of knew it was coming, but it's like it's so loud, and it still gets me every time. But it's so they
It,
freak out and they're just terrified. Roger runs up the stairs. Get a great scene from Christine, a shot where she's like, I think they had it in one of the trailers too, where she's just crying and like screaming. So emotional. It was portrayed so good. And again, these kids just did a phenomenal job.
yeah, they played it so well. And really just an unnerving scene. You can see she is absolutely convinced there is something there. And whether we see it or they see it or not, she's not just acting there. Like that is believable for Nancy. Nancy's in the room in the other bed. She's standing there thinking the same thing, like, oh my God, like, what is Christine looking at? And then the door slamming just further solidifies the fact that there's something in there. Great
Yeah.
freaking scene. Great scene.
Yeah. And we get to see more now of like actually Ed and Lorraine showing people how and explaining how most things have a rational explanation. Like if you think you're hearing something or if you think your place is haunted, there's probably just something going on with your house, like, internally, or mechanisms of maybe something's breaking, or you're just hearing wind, or natural creaks or boards, things like that. And they actually have a really good scene too where like they debunk a couple's kind of ghost terror moment. They're like, "Oh, that's noise," and he's like, "Nope, this is just the wind, the moisture in the boards expands the boards or something, and it's creating this creaky noise." Really, really, honestly cool, because you kind of see that actually from Ed. There's a couple times where, especially when we get to see Carolyn approach them after one of their like lectures, saying, "Hey, I need help," and he doesn't want to do it right away, but Lorraine pushes him into it. So thought that was really cool. You gotta, kind of see the good and like maybe I don't want to go take on this investigation right now. Like, so I thought that was interesting. But yeah,
Yes, it shows that he's cognizant of of Lorraine having these issues and struggling with the fact that she is so in touch with these spirits and entities, and he realizes that she is going through a lot with each of these cases. And I also love the fact that they also look for the more plausible explanations to these hauntings that these people think they're experiencing. And it goes to show that these people do have integrity. They don't just completely believe that it's always due to hauntings. They're also
right.
looking for the rational explanations. So I do enjoy that scene that we get there with Ed and Lorraine explaining to them, hey, it's just the boards creaking, it's the water running in the pipes, those sorts of things.
Exactly. Exactly. And we finally get to, which is one of my probably top two scenes in this movie. Carolyn again playing. Well, she's actually not playing, but there's someone playing hide and clap with her. And she actually looks in the rooms. All the kids are to bed. Roger's gone. And she's hearing claps. Like someone is literally playing hide and clap with her. And she eventually gets to the basement because she looks down and she's like, okay. She's like, I'm going to lock anybody in here that's, here. And as soon as she's shutting that door, something pushes her down the steps. Uh, and before that, she gets led to the basement, which is why now she gets locked in the basement. A ball actually gets thrown across the room while she's just like recuperating and like recovering from literally falling down a flight of steps. Terrifying. And she runs up the steps, and those matches that we talked about earlier come into play that Roger used when they first investigated the basement and discovering it. She lights one up, nothing happens. She's just trying to get a sense of the room. Lights another one up, and these two hands just come literally. It's like her left shoulder in the movie over her shoulder, and they clap twice, and it blows out the match. And it's literally like the scariest thing ever. Like, I don't know how else to explain it.
It's iconic. It's up there with some of the scariest scenes that I've seen in horror. It's so creative. You've never really seen anything like that. And to have that jump scare timed as impeccably well as it was, oh, it just drove home for a good scare. And I freaking loved it. Everything leading up to her getting to the basement was really good too. There was a huge shatter she heard before that from one of the pictures of the family dropping down from the wall by the stairs. So that
Yes.
was a great jump scare. You're just so freaking on edge. The clocks were chiming at that time too. Very, very unsettling scenes and freaking iconic, like I said.
It's like, again, like every one thing happens and then another thing happens and then another thing happens. And then, like, dude, it's every scene, something's like at this point, it's something happening in every scene. Little or big moments like that, jump scare with the clap game, but like, or hide and clap, it's something. So that's why I said, like, literally 75% of this movie, you're on edge. Like, it's insane.
The minimal
Um,
lighting, the pan shots of seeing basically every single room at a single time and wondering what's lurking. They just did it so freaking well. I can't get over it.
yeah. So this is a really cool part of the movie. We actually get to learn like the process of getting possessed from actually Ed and Lorraine. They're at a college and, doing their lecture, and they explain what happens when you're experiencing these things basically. So it's infestation, oppression, and then possession. So infestation, and you can correct me if I'm wrong at any point, but infestation is when you first start hearing stuff like thuds, knocks, creaks, maybe something fell, or hear something and you go in the other room and you find something falling over, anything, little thing like that. And then oppression is when you're almost like you're at your most vulnerable, state of mind, physically, mentally.
You're almost getting targeted by the
You're getting
demonic
targeted.
presence. Hmm.
Yes. And you're just so vulnerable, so much is happening. And when you're that vulnerable, that's when the possession comes in. So really, three stages there, which I thought was
And
really great scene.
who would we say is the most susceptible so far?
Carolyn.
Yep, the
Yeah.
bruises. She's taking meds. She's clearly a little bit distraught, especially after the clap,
Yeah.
the hide and seek game that we just had in the earlier scenes, and then the clap as well by the cellar stairs. So she is by far the most susceptible. We see that. Does she know that? Maybe not, but she's definitely struggling here. And you sum those 3 points beautifully. And they have some really creepy shots at that lecture at the university where they're showing one of their past exorcisms.
Yes.
And I think for us, we are assuming that this was the exorcism that really took a toll on Lorraine and is one of the reasons that she was struggling getting back into paranormal investigations and was making her a little bit more hesitant. And those exorcism scenes that they have on their reel at the university are just so disturbing. We see the person that is possessed. He's got his eyes rolled up. He's just absolutely out of this world. And Ed even says that he is a French Canadian farmer in those scenes in that film they're playing, yet he was speaking Latin fluently and he was even speaking it backwards at times. So that just plays on the fact of how terrifying these possessions can be and just how tough of an experience it can be for Ed and Lorraine. And it helps build on the fact that Lorraine is struggling with it.
Yeah, he was, I think also they said crying blood and then an upside down cross
Mm-hmm.
appeared in his lower abdomen area. And that's when he like jump scared Lorraine right after that. And it, like you said, it freaked her the
Yep.
hell out. And Ed said she saw something that took a huge piece. Mentioned earlier, you said this is something like with Lorraine, it's like she, can see stuff, but it takes a toll on her. It takes one little piece at a time. And it's like death by 1,000 arrows, or 1,000 cuts, because you eventually, you bleed out, or, it's just takes a big enough toll where
Yep.
you're done. So, but this one took a big piece, he said. So something she saw was really bad. Um, and like I said earlier, we get to see Carolyn reaching out for help. She was actually at that lecture that you just mentioned, which is really cool because now you're like, yes, like they're doing something about it. Like she's got interest. She's got, she's, taking a stand for whatever the hell is going on there. So you see her, and then after, we, I'm trying to, let me see if I can find him quick. Yeah, Drew. We actually get introduced to Drew, who's a part of, the Ed and Lorraine Warren crew, investigative crew. A young kid. I don't know how old he is. I don't know if they ever say or if he's just doing this full time, or I'm assuming, but I don't know. And he's like, "Hey, I got someone here for you to meet," and it's Carolyn, and basically just begging for help. And like I said earlier too, this is a moment where Ed was like, "Actually, we gotta go do something, or we gotta get going." And then she's like, "No, but I have a kid and I have five, daughters, and you have a daughter. Like, do you know how bad of a toll that would take if this was happening to you?" And Lorraine's giving loving heart was like, "Of course, like we can go help." So really, really cool kind of segue into her going to that lecture and then literally begging for help. So very, very cool.
Yeah, and then we end up at the house, like you said, with the full crew ready to set up their equipment for
Yeah,
whatever images they want to try to capture. They've got a lot of pretty legit equipment. They set up stuff in pretty much every single room with cameras. They even set stuff up outside by that old tree and by the pond. So they are pretty well set to truly get into investigating this. And like you said, I love that we're now bought in. Carolyn is doing something about it. She wants to fight this thing. It's really enjoyable to see for her to step up and try to take control of what's going on, and to see Lorraine contemplate but say, you know what, we're doing this. We're doing this. This is why we do this work. We want to help people out. That's always the end goal, regardless of just how tragic the experience might be.
and do you notice too how like Roger the dad doesn't seem to be like fully invested in it right
Yeah,
away?
definitely initially he was very skeptical
Yeah,
of believing this. And of course, he hasn't been there for some of the more recent scares that Carolyn experienced with the kids. He wasn't there for some of that. So he hasn't seen some of these moments that were really convincing for him. And we even have a scene there when they're setting up the camera by the tree, and he's asking, why are you putting this out here by the tree? He's like, oh, some demonic entity just got hung themselves right by this tree. And then you see Roger sitting there like, okay, that's kind
he
of
like awkwardly
insane.
walks
Yeah.
out from under it. It's so funny.
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
that.
gives a little history buff to him there, and he's like,
Yeah.
he looks up and he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna walk out. I'm gonna walk away." But
Uh, yeah, they were
yeah,
telling them that they could smell rotting flesh throughout the house. They also said that it was freezing, which we've mentioned before. They said that, I found this interesting, the knocks that they were hearing were coming in threes and would stop at dawn, which Ed said to them was likely an insult to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So I thought that
yeah,
was a really good little
the
insight
Trinity
to,
there.
yep, to what the knocks were signifying.
Yeah, And they actually, now we get to learn more about the other side of things, with exorcisms, is they actually need approved. And, you know, they need it to be approved before, because a lot of stuff happens, and to get anything approved for this one in particular, this case, it's got to be approved by the Vatican, um, and that Roman Catholic Christianity, religion, if you will. And we get introduced to like the priest they're kind of in contact with. Actually, I think it's the same priest that blesses all of those, or not blesses, but walks around and secures that museum of all those haunted items. And you know, we get to learn, I think, a little bit more about Bathsheba now, and the history a little bit of her. And Ed, mentioned it too, how she was the one that hung herself on that tree. And there's a scene, I think now, and correct me if I'm wrong, where we actually get to learn about some of the other entities that have lived there. We already heard about Rory. We learned about a little bit about Bathsheba, and there's a couple others. So, do you want to kind of introduce them?
Yes, so we talked about Bathsheba.
Mm-hmm.
She hung herself out by that tree after murdering her, sacrificing her 7-day old son, which is crazy, absolutely shocking. And we also learned that her time of death was 3:07, which is what time the clocks were stopping at, which is also revealed by Ed and Lorraine as the witching hour. Which
Yes.
that reveal is so good because if you don't read about it prior, you have no idea as the audience. So when you hear that, you're like, oh shit, here we
Yeah.
go. And we also have, so there was another family there. There was a mom named Walker. Her last name was Walker. She lived during the 1930s with a boy named Rory, which we have talked about, who mysteriously disappeared in the woods. The mom killed herself in a cellar. And the farm has been subdivided and sold off for years. There was another boy who drowned in the pond, and another woman who worked as a maid in one of the neighboring homes. She committed suicide. So there's been a lot
Right.
of deaths that have took place within the land, not just in the house, but on the entire property. And that goes in line with what Bathsheba said before she hung herself about proclaiming love to Satan and cursing anyone who took their land.
Yeah, and that's literally what I have noted, and was just going to say, it's like all or any people who lived here got like that curse she placed originally on them. Like, I'm going to start messing with you, and I'm not going to spoil it yet, but it involves the mothers of all of these, families. So, um, we actually get introduced to Brad too, who's like, is he a local police officer, or is he like a neighboring? I can't remember how they introduce him exactly, but or where he's from, but he gets introduced, and he's a cop that's gonna be, I think he's just there for like security purposes, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's just a local cop. I'm not 100% sure on that. But yeah, Officer Brad, and I like his character.
Mm-hmm.
He does okay. He is one of
Mm-hmm.
the ones, especially that is very, very skeptical of what's going on here. It takes him
Oh,
a long time to believe in what's
the
going
most
on.
skeptical. The most
Yes, he
skeptical.
is probably, yep, for sure. And I like the scenes as well, having everybody there, getting all the equipment set up. They had another good soundtrack going during those scenes, which lets you kind of let loose a little bit as the audience, kind of relax a little bit before things start rolling again. So there was some good parts there, getting all the equipment set up. We've got the whole gang here now ready to fight this thing. That was all really well done.
Yeah, that whole setting up equipment scene was actually dope. Like,
Yeah.
you put yourself back in that time, and it's like that's how they did it compared to like, today's stuff. If
Mhm.
anybody's watched any like ghost adventure shows or paranormal things, it's like the equipment we have today is insane compared to what they used back then. So like seeing them just like, and Drew even like rigging stuff up,
This old vintage stuff. Love it.
it's awesome. I love that. It gets me excited talking about it every time.
Mhm.
So, and like you mentioned, the 307 time is, there. And there's a scene after that too, where it's like they have this kitchen scene where they're making breakfast, and it's like things are looking up now, and everyone's like happy that Ed and Lorraine are there. They're like a protective shield. The cops there too, like, and I think Carolyn's like, I haven't seen this, type of energy in like so long. Like everyone's just like so happy. There's no negativity. They don't feel shadowed by anything. Like they can breathe. Like
Yep.
I love this scene. I loved how they implemented it.
Yeah, again, it lets you let loose a little bit and to care about these people more so. These are actual normal people trying to live their lives, and it's just so relieving to them to know that they've got somebody here to help them. And you feel that sense of security a little bit when they're all at the breakfast table, not having to worry about anything lurking in the shadows. It's bright out, you can see all the corners. So your level of being frightened or worried goes down very much so. So great scenes. I also wanted to touch on the night before when they're after they get everything set up with the equipment. I love that Ed sets up all the crosses throughout the house. And he tells them that he sets them all up because he knows it pisses the demons off and it gets them activated. I love that. I thought that was a cool little line there. But yes, we had the breakfast scene, and pretty much right after that, we have Carolyn saying that she's a little bit sick. She's not feeling well. She's going to go lay down. So we then have Ed and Lorraine out back putting up laundry on the clothesline. And it starts to get really stormy and the wind starts picking up and the sheets start kind of flailing in the wind. And then all of the sudden, one of the sheets pulls off the clothesline and boom, attaches to a form, almost a human form. And the rain is out there to see that. Very good scare, very good jump
Oh
scare.
yeah.
Watching that the first time, I did not see that coming, of course. Just goes to show the ingenuity when it comes to the scares here. Just
Yeah.
really well done. She glances up, and what does she see, Justin?
Is it Carolyn or I can't remember who. It was honestly, was it Carolyn
It was Bathsheba.
or Bathsheba? Okay.
Yeah,
I knew it was gonna be one of those two.
in
I
Carolyn's
do remember
room.
that. I do remember the scene though. I don't remember who was in the window, but I vividly remember the like silhouette of a
Yep,
person in that bed sheet, and then yeah, it hits the window on the house. But
yep.
yeah.
So good.
And after seeing Bathsheba, now Carolyn is sleeping, and we actually get an insane like close up shot of her, like literally levitating horizontally, like above her, and enters Carolyn through like I don't even know how you want to explain it. Like her, it's like blood or puke or something that like enters in like through her, and they like transfer that. Bathsheba transfers that into Carolyn. It's really hard to describe, especially for anyone listening that has seen it. Like they know, but it's like it's really hard to describe. So and like Carolyn like screams and it like cuts. It's
Yep.
just such a good way to like now for the audience to know like, oh my god, like she's actually this is happening. Like it's in Carolyn.
The third stage is very well underway after that part.
Yeah. Yep. So let's see. What do we got? I think now we get to see, yeah. So that happened, and Lorraine's exorcism story is brought up again, and we talked about it earlier. It's always good just like touching up on some of that stuff because it does affect these characters in such a dramatic way, and we get to see like Ed explaining it again, just how like that really has affected her because there's a few times where he is like, I'm doing this by myself, like stay back. And we actually just get to see a good bonding moment, like I think Lorraine, to put it vaguely, is like, why did we, when we got married, like, what did you tell me? Like, we were brought together for a reason. Like, this is it. This, and we learn that later when like shit really hits the fan. Like, this is why they got brought together. This is why they do what they do. You're not doing this by yourself, even if it takes a toll on me. Like, I'm gonna be with you, basically. So I really love that.
In the rain, even Ed reveals to, I don't remember if he's talking to Roger, but he reveals to whoever he's talking to that Lorraine, after I think the exorcism we see in one of the lecture halls with the French Canadian farmer, we learned that Lorraine took it so hard that she locked herself in her room for 8 days and would barely eat or drink anything. So that just goes to show just how deep of an impact that had on Lorraine after that exorcism. 8 days, 8 days,
Good
man.
point. Yeah, I like how you brought that up
Man,
because, like I said, it affects these little things affect them very dramatically. But we get a scene with Brad and Drew, and I think one of them offers them coffee. I think Brad offers him coffee. He's like, no, I'm good. Brad goes and gets some coffee, and he hears the wind chime kind of rattling, and no one's out there. And he's kind of peeking, doing. You kind of see the cop in him come out a little because he's investigating, looking around, and he runs into I think the woman that committed suicide that's dressed up as a maid. He sees her kind of in the side room by the kitchen area, after getting his coffee, and there's a really good jump scare. I forgot what she said, a line. I can't remember it.
Look what you
I
made me
am
do, I think
Look
is
what
what.
you made me do. I was
Yep.
gonna say something like that.
Yep.
Um, and he like falls down. He's like, Ed, Ed. He's like screaming for him, and they all come running in. He's like, whoa, what? And he explains pretty much what I just said, but then a lot starts happening
A
here.
lot happens there, a lot. And I love that with the scenes with Brad. It feels like you're so isolated with Brad. I kind of forgot that the
Yeah,
family was even in the separate room. You felt so isolated, and I think that brings out the fear for what Brad's going through. You definitely experienced that. And yeah, I forgot they were even in the other room. So then you get them to come in, and then like you said, we have a lot of pretty crazy scenes that are coming up here.
yeah. Do you want to follow up with what happens right after that? Because it involves Cindy walking around, and they actually are able to like catch some evidence here.
Yes. So did the girl's hair get pulled before that? One of the daughters. It might have been
Mm,
before that.
I think it's after, or
Okay,
was it?
so
Actually, now that you say that, I want to
regardless,
say that it's after, but
so Cindy, she ends up walking up the stairs, and the family notices, Cindy, where are you going? Like, why is she just walking out of the room and up the stairs? She doesn't say a word. The camera in the hallway clicks, so the camera picked up something. And Officer Brad's like, well, I mean, she's just walking by. Of course, it's going to pick her up. And Ed explains, no, if that goes off, it means there's something there, not just the human presence. There is an entity that is in another realm that is following her as she's going up the steps. I freaking love that. She walks up the stairs. I believe that she goes to, let's see, I think she goes to one of the rooms, I believe.
I
And
think
she
it's
says that
in
Rory is with
Nancy's room
her.
or something.
Yep.
Yeah,
Rory is with her, and he says, this is where I hide, is the sound that she's hearing, or the person that's whispering to her, we assume
right.
is Rory. She ends up by the armoire, that standing closet. The family ends up coming to see what's going on. We have the UV light, which is another smart little thinking scene there where Ed pulls out the UV light. He kind of checks the floor with the lights off to see if he sees footprints. He sees handprints and footprints leading up to the standing closet. He checks inside, and he sees these handprints kind of go up into the top corner almost of this closet. There's nowhere else to go. So he ends up thinking, smart thinking. He rips off pieces of the closet. He ends up finding that there's a boarded up hole in the wall. And behind that boarded
Yeah,
up piece, they find a backwards little area behind the walls where you can crawl between, where
yeah. It's like a crawl
is
space, I
assumed, yep, a
think.
crawl space, which is assumed to be the hiding spot that Rory used.
Yeah, and you get to see like some of the toys in there, the music, circus music box, and
Mm-hmm.
actually like the rope that had a noose tied onto it, like that it was going to be used to hang someone, which is creepy. And actually, Lorraine falls through the floor
Mm-hmm.
all the way down to the basement, which is totally like if you're watching this for the first time, totally unexpected. Like, but granted, the house, like, it could happen, it's an old house and a place where no one really walks. So yeah, I'm assuming the boards would probably be pretty weak. And we get to see uh Lorraine kind of have a horrible, horrible time in the basement now. It's like it's dark, it's one on one with Bathsheba at this point. And she's now encountering her, and I think she explains how the mothers of all of these families have, Bathsheba takes part in it, and where she pretty much possesses all the moms to do these horrible things that actually kill and sacrifice like their children. um I don't know if you kind of want to branch off of that or what, but it's a pretty monumental moment in the movie because it backs up, all of these like side characters we get to meet with the generations that have been there before.
Yeah, that scene where she's going back in the crawl space behind the standing closet and she falls through, man, she drops. Like she's dropping 2 floors down to the freaking cellar. It's disorienting for the audience and for her. And that just adds to the level of fear you feel once you're in the cellar. It's dark. She can't see crap. She's seeing things like you said. She's going toe to toe at this rate with Bathsheba. Really good scenes. It for her again. She is feeling isolated in this moment. She's on her own. The people haven't came downstairs to help her yet. Very good scenes. Very
Yeah, and
scary.
they're trying to find her, and actually when she falls, I think she runs into the woman, the mom that actually had Rory that
Mm-hmm.
like drowned.
Yep.
And it's like it's kind of like this heavier set mom, and like the makeup on this like looked phenomenal on this character. And again, we hear, why did she make me do it, or why did
Mm-hmm.
she make me do that? And that's when I said earlier, like, all the moms do this. Bathsheba possesses them to kill their children. So it makes sense that they're always like, why did she make me do this? Like this horrible act, this horrible thing that they would have no intention ever of doing, but being under the possession, obviously, yes. And I actually have in my notes now, this is where Nancy actually gets thrown across the room. So this must have happened after that when you mentioned that. Um, this actually happened in real life. This scene that I'm going to be talking about, um, terrifying, absolutely terrifying. Nancy gets thrown across the room. Being in the movie, I don't know how it was in real life, but I just know she was thrown. But in the movie, she's actually getting pulled by her hair. Goes like 20 feet across the other side of the room, like breaks glass, falls to the ground, and then gets dragged to like another side of the room. And that's when Lorraine actually gets a snips or scissors and cuts her hair, and kind of she's able to like chill for like just a second after that. Thoughts? Like that's a huge scene in this movie. Huge
Just
scene.
to see the entity actually take hold of these people, these family members, and throw them around like a rag doll is it's so frightening because you realize that anybody here can get killed. This entity is
Oh yeah.
actually grabbing you and tossing you around. It wouldn't take much for them to throw something at you and kill you. So you are feeling the level of insecurity as a family member is that I could freaking die here. And it is
Yeah.
getting just chaotic. I would just describe those scenes as chaotic for sure. What do you do? How do you react to this?
And one little thing that happened right after that I just love, such a cool moment. Ed turns to Drew and he's like, "Did you get that?" And he's holding the camera and he's like, "We got it." Because again, if you remember, they are collecting. The whole reason why they're there is because they're collecting evidence to send up all the way through eventually to like the Vatican to get
Yep.
an exorcism approved. All of these hauntings, all the equipment they set up, it's all to capture evidence to do an exorcism to get it approved. It's just the way it is. And yeah, really, really cool shot there with Drew. He's like, "Yep, I got it."
Mhm.
So I love that.
Yeah, and Father Gordon had said initially that we need evidence here and it needs to go to the Vatican because the family is not Catholic. So he wasn't able to just go out there and do that himself. He had to get the
Oh
approval from the
yeah,
Vatican. Yep.
and I think
So
they're none of them are baptized either.
none of them are baptized as well. Yeah. So he really needed to get that approval from the Vatican.
Yeah, and we actually get to see. So after that, all that crazy shit going on, we get to see the Perrin family actually packing up, and they're going away. They're going. Is it a hotel or just a little inn that they're going in? I
Yep.
think, and you know they got the evidence, so they're getting out of the house now. Like they got what they need. They're gonna get out, and they'll go back as soon as they get approval, basically at this point. So they're all just like bundled up in here, and uh Lorraine gets this weird feeling now, and she's able to do this about, she gets this weird feeling about her daughter Judy. Uh, I think she's actually just standing on the dock by the river, and she sees Judy floating through there like a corpse, like a dead
Mm-hmm.
corpse. and she runs back to the house. She calls, is it her mom? Because Judy calls her grand or Nana, I think.
It might have been her
I think
mom.
it's
I'm not
Lorraine's
entirely
mom.
sure there. That's a good guess
Um,
though.
I would assume. But she calls and she's like, just is Judy okay? Like, check up on her. Like, she's like, I'll explain it later. And she's like, I'm sorry for freaking out, but and Ed's there and he's like, what the hell's going on? Like, tell me. And she's like, I got a bad feeling. She's like, this is a warning. It has to be a warning. And that again bites him later in the butt with another scene with Judy. So
We could probably go right off of that. Yeah, by the time the Warrens get
yeah.
back to their house, Judy is up and about and she's seeing things. So this demonic entity is able to actually go from different places and attach itself to different items if it's able to connect to a human in some way. So Bathsheba is literally able to transport to the Warren's house and she starts haunting Judy. Judy ends up going into one of the side rooms, and what she sees is a pretty freaking frightening scene. She sees Bathsheba, just the back side of Bathsheba, rocking in an old chair,
Oh my gosh, dude.
brushing, brushing the Annabelle doll. How disturbing was that? Oh my gosh. It
Like
just,
those two things
oh
together in the same room alone, but like in a rocking chair, might you add? Yeah.
man. And they get home right in time, and Lorraine do to help Judy and to keep her safe. So Judy's fine after that, but those were some really good scenes. There's something about when you have a child that obviously is completely helpless to these things. It really
Oh
just
yeah.
builds that fear for those types of scenes. I tell you what.
Yeah. I just to cap that off too, dude. Like that scene was incredible because you didn't like you didn't know if you're actually going to see Annabelle again or not, too. That's
Mm-hmm.
another thing to think about. And they actually brought her back for a good scene with Bathsheba. So we get to see Annabelle, I think, right at the end too, in their museum. But very, very cool scene. And during that, actually, too, like the rocking chair starts moving and like gets thrown, but Ed's able to like
Yes. Oh,
protect her at the last second too. So like this thing is violent. Like we knew that, but now, like, dude, we get to see some real shit going on with it. Like this is really, really violent. So
absolutely destructive. Absolutely destructive when you see a chair get flung like that as fast as it is. I mean, if she gets hit by that, she's getting seriously hurt. So I tell you what, and we have them at the house, and then we also have the family that went to the hotel there. We can see that Carolyn is very, very much struggling. She just does not look like herself. She looks strange. She's acting strange, no emotion.
yep. Yeah, the kids actually call they I think they call Ed and they're like, "Hey, Carolyn just left with Christine and April." And obviously knowing before Lorraine put together like two and two, like the mother is possessed and she sacrifices the child. And Ed's like, I think he calls Roger and he's like, "Hey, everyone get back to the house and meet up there because." And we get a scene with her driving, and the kids are like, "Mom, are you okay?" And she's just like, thousand
Dead
yard
stare.
stare, doesn't say anything, just driving home. Very, very creepy. So we're getting to the point now where